Hi everyone! Welcome to Artsonia's After School Art Club. Today we have a fun art project from Janine Campbell, an art teacher from Michigan. Hope you enjoy the video and don't forget to have your artwork uploaded to your Artsonia gallery.
Hello, visual arts teacher Janine Campbell from West Michigan here, ready to share with you a really fun way to do some symmetry work with portraits. Instead of just using our dominant hand to draw, we're actually going to be using both of our hands to draw, which is known as a bilateral drawing. Then we're going to finish it up with some watercolor techniques, and you could really use this in so many ways. I'm going to be doing a self-portrait, but you could ask a friend to help you out, or even work from your computer or something else. So without further ado, let's get started. So you're going to need to get two Sharpies to create these portraits. You're going to use the Sharpies to create a bilateral drawing, which means you are drawing with both your hands at the same time. Because you're doing a portrait, you want to think about creating the eyes, the mouth, the nose, and other components using a single continuous line. Once you've created that part, the next part is to really add additional lines to decorate your background. So it's really up to you how you want to do that. For me, I decided to have lines radiate from the contour of the outline of the portrait, and I did this a couple of times to divide up the space. You could do this in a variety of ways. What I'm showing you is just one of those ways. After I divide it up into a couple of sections, I'm now going to add some line designs to create a series of patterns that fills the space. Again, you can make a decision of how you would like to do yours, but I've decided to use a series of lines for one of the rows, more of like a fish scale or a scale up for another one of the rows. And then I'm going to add on some additional lines and patterns and details until I finish up adding the details really to the entire space. So it's really up to you to kind of decide what it is that's going to look best for the project that you're doing. This is what I decided to do for mine. Once I was done with my work, it was now time for me to decide how to finish it. I could have used colored pencils or markers or a variety of media really to do my work. And I'm going to add a couple more lines to my piece before I add that media. And the media that I chose to use for my work is watercolor. Now, watercolor is something that I like because it's really flexible. I'm using Reeves watercolor, but you could really use any brand that you'd like. As you can see, my watercolor is pretty well used. I'm going to use the inside of my tray as a way to mix up colors and to create some new colors as well. I've got my cup of water and my brush to help me create the color inside of my lines. So I'm going to add some water to colors that I want to use, and I'm going to use what's known as non-local color to create my piece. That means I'm using colors that aren't really the colors of my skin or hair or clothing. It's for me to be imaginative and decide how it is that I'd like to use it. I'm going to use a variety of painting techniques that include wet on wet, which means that I'm using wet paper with wet paint on it so that it really smoothly goes on. I can also, when you're doing wet on wet, add drops of other colors, which allows it to spread together almost like tie-dye. I'm going to use wet on dry, meaning that I use wet paint on dry paper, and that gives me some darker values in terms of the color. And I'm just really not planning super carefully where I'm putting color. I'm really thinking about having one side be more cooler tones and the other side be much more warmer tones. But other than that, I'm just kind of placing color where I think it would look interesting, and it's really up to you to experiment and see what you like best. If you're not sure about the color combinations, you can always do a practice run on a sheet of paper next to you. And as you can see, depending on how much water you put into your paint, you can get some darker tones, which allows you to have some shading and value. I like watercolor because it's very forgiving and it allows you to have a lot of variety in terms of what it is that you get to do and how it is that you get to do it. Once you have your paper totally covered in paint, you just have to wait for it to dry, and then you can share the results. It's up to you if you want to go back in and do some additional layers of watercolor, but I really like the way this turned out. You'll also notice I'm just going in with a wet paintbrush here at the end, and that's because I really wanted to blend those values together in the background, and by adding that additional bit of water to it, it allows the watercolor to bleed together to create that tone. Well, I hope you had a really good time making that. I know it's really fun for me to work in that way. I would love to see what it is that you make, so please feel free to tag me at Campbell Art Soup on Twitter or Instagram, because I really would love to see what it is that you've made. Happy creating!